So hello there and welcome to a brand new episode of the DNF1 F1 podcast, a show where we take all of the latest news, gossip and events in the world of Formula 1 and we like to relay that back to you for your listening or viewing pleasure, depending on which platform of course you choose to follow us on. And guys, before we do something a little bit different on the DNF1 F1 podcast, we've done regular F1 news updates, we've done regular talk on F1 races, reviews or previews for that matter. We've also tried a little bit of gaming, which of course some of you weren't really keen on, but that's fine. We might be able to bring that back in the future. And of course, we've done our series for women in motorsport, which of course we will be doing more of those episodes in the future, given the positive feedback that we've received from you guys. But we're going to try something a little bit different today. We are going to do a new series, if you like, called Motorsport Diaries. And basically what that's going to be about is I'm going to be interviewing some guests in the motorsport world to get their take on their experiences in motorsport, what they've been up to, and of course get their thoughts on the Formula 1 World Championship as well. And there's plenty to get into that, of course. And joining me on the first episode, a young man who I've had some experience working with on the online esports scene, if you like, a good friend of mine. It's Alex Bomberg. Alex, sure I've said your surname right. I usually prefer to refer to you by your online tag name. So famously a while ago since you changed it. But first of all, how are you doing this evening? You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me, Adam. It's a pleasure to join you. I've been a fan of this podcast for a while. Always gets me up to my drives to races. You know, when you're driving 2.5 hours down to Milton Keynes, sometimes it's quite nice to pop on and get you through the drive. So yeah, massively happy to join. And yeah, you did get the surname right, thankfully.
Yeah, I always prefer to refer to your online tag, and I'm not going to say that on here because I think that just ruined the surprise. If you want to find out more, you're going to have to follow Alex on his Instagram, which of course I will leave a description and a link, of course, if you are watching on YouTube. If, of course, you are following us on all major podcasting platforms, you can check Alex out on his social media as well. But we'll get into all the plug-in and everything else later on. But Alex, of course, as part of this series, we're going to be talking about your motorsport background. And, of course, a young man such as yourself, your experience, of course, won't be as lengthy as perhaps some other people that we may invite in the future. But of course, you very much are involved in karting, and in particular the BPEC series, the British Pro Endurance Championship, if that's correct. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that is exactly and obviously what format that entails?
Yeah, so BPEC we refer to it as BPEC. It's an endurance series that takes part in the UK, and it goes to a lot of tracks. And it's different formatting endurance races. So some will be 6 hours, and then I think there's one double header 6 hour and one weekend. So, and this is for next year's calendar because they released it a couple of days ago. There's a double header in a place called Rora, and then as always the 24-hour in Teesside. And the teams go around and compete in the races.
Okay, that sounds really interesting, actually. So, obviously, you're competing in different endurance formats. How often would you turn up to races? Is it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, or it's just according to the calendar as it is?
I think it's more likely about a month. Sometimes you have one race every 2 weeks. Sometimes there's one every 5 or 6 weeks. But I think on average, it works out at about once a month throughout the year.
Okay, so obviously you've been doing these series for a little while now. How exactly did you manage to get into this series? Because it's not one that I've personally heard of. I mean, I've competed in karting probably when I was a bit younger than when you were in the juniors, and I'll be honest with you, this is a new format for me, but it's one that intrigues me because I do love a bit of endurance racing.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot of fun, and it sort of started back in 2020 when I got a drive at the British 24 just for the 24 hours, sorry, with one of my friends who was just running the team. And it was a great experience for my first time in a pro kart. The results weren't fantastic. We had a lot of bad luck throughout the race, and continuous bad luck throughout a 24-hour just keeps adding salt to the wound. So we continued to drop down, and it wasn't really a result to remember, but an experience to remember, I'd say. And then fast forward to the next year, I wasn't going to be doing the 24-hour with them again. For whatever reason, they chose to not have me. But about 2 weeks before the event, I had a message from another person that I know in the karting world saying, "Are you up for doing a 24-hour? I've got a mate who needs a driver. So I was like, okay, let's see what this is all about. And to cut a long story short, I about 6 hours later, I had a drive for the 24-hour and I had to sort a hotel to get down to Teesside in about a week's time.
Oh, Jesus, that must have been a nightmare to sort out. I mean, I'm guessing you're probably exhausted by the time you got there, but I suppose for those, if they're F1 fans or those that aren't familiar with how an endurance race format works, how would you sort of describe it to them or break it down for them?
I think, simply put, the format of it is non-stop racing for a team for a length of time. Obviously, I mentioned the 24-hour, but we also do 6 hours as well, which are just as grueling and not as fun.
So is there a format that you would prefer to do? Do you prefer the 6 hour format or the 24 one? Or is it really any different at all? It's just as grueling?
I think they are both completely different because with the 6 hour one, in a team of three, you can get away with 2 stints each, and it's relatively not light work, but it's not too tasking. In a 24-hour, if you go in with a 3, I don't think you'll see the other side of it. We tried it with a 3 at Daytona back in 2020 at the back end of the 24-hour that was delayed due to COVID, and 3 of us did it, and we were not well the next day. So we went in with a team of 5 this year with Rethink Racing, which is who I race for, yeah, it's all about teamwork, and you've got to work together to get to the kart to the end.
Yeah, and of course, I'd imagine that, because this isn't one of those where you can rent a car at a centre and then just go and drive around. I know certain circuits like Butmore Park and Rye House, they do similar experiences to endurance racing where you have to rent your own car. But in your case, I'd imagine it's pretty much your own car. You put your own money and effort into it, of course. You may have to do some work on it as well, get your hands dirty. I mean, have you been involved in that side of things, or is it purely just about the driving for you?
It's purely about the driving for me because I don't own a car. It's not my car. As I say, I race for his name's Luke. I race for Rethink Racing. They run the kart, they prep the kart, and at the minute we are hiring from Haas Chassis. They don't have. I don't think they have an affiliation to the F1 team, but just a similar name. And so yeah, we hire the chassis from Haas, and then Luke sorts out, builds it, sets it up. With the help of Adam Nichols from Haas, and then we go and race it.
Well, judging by how their chassis have been, how their performance has been this season, that's probably not necessarily a bad thing. So, so I guess in your experience, what would a normal endurance race look like for you, Alex? Would you, obviously, other than the driving, of course, would you have to do much prep work for the track, or is it one of those where you sort of turn up, you learn the circuit as you go, but you're kind of just learning all the time?
Yeah, if possible, I try and I play a lot of. I have a sim at home which I did some esports in a year or two ago, and if possible, I try and get a mod of the track onto either Assetto Corsa or R Factor to try and just sort of get my eye in to really understand, just sort of the basics of the track, so I can go to the track with a general idea. If I can't do that, it usually just a track walk on the Thursday or Friday morning does the job, and then you get into practice. Usually with BPEC, you have a whole day, at least one whole day testing, so that's more than enough to get your eye in before qualifying on what would be the Saturday or Sunday morning.
Any sort of cheeky look on YouTube videos to see other people going around? Because I mean, and I say this sort of loosely because whenever I turn up, even to like rental karting places, I think I went to a place called Capital Karts not long ago. I'm not sure if you've been there. It's near Dagenham. Sort of up my ends, and a couple of days before I went, I literally just went on YouTube and I thought, right, it's a well-known circuit for recreational karters. I'm pretty sure there are going to be people that go to their weekly club events, etc., and just watch videos of them on a GoPro going around. And it's amazing how much you can learn because, of course, you mentioned a track walk, which is always nice if you can be afforded that luxury. But if you're just turning up for a half an hour session and you want to beat your mates, if you're any good, you need to learn the track. It doesn't matter how quick you are or some of the excuses that come in. If you're the lightest, you're going to be the fastest, all of that stuff that you hear. It's always important to know the track that you're on. In terms of sort of the preparation, how much time do you reckon you'd spend preparing yourself if you didn't have the opportunity to get in the car and, as you said, do a test day, if you like, before you actually got going?
As I say, Is this presuming that I've never drove the track before and I don't know what it looks like?
Yeah, but even when you go back, obviously you see in the Formula One world, a lot of guys will try and refresh their memory because the sims can only do so much for them.
Yeah, I think ideally probably 1 to 2 hours is usually enough because, as you said, the sim can only do so much. So it's all well and good doing 1,000 laps around the sim on a set of course. So you got to do that in real life because it's completely different, and we don't have the exact, or I don't have the exact kart that we have in real life to throw into a set of course and go. As fantastic as that would be. So yeah, probably about an hour or two just to get the eye in and really be able to lap the track without having to think what's next, almost with your eyes closed, and then you're in a good place to go, and then just get to the track and work on the setup and make sure you got the quickest kart come qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds exciting. I mean, of course, one question that springs to mind, because I've never done anything like a 24-hour endurance race in terms of karts. I think the longest I've done is about 2 or 3 hours. And even then, that seemed a little bit grueling considering how long you're out there for. But what do you sort of do, Alex, in between when you're not in the car? Because I imagine if you're in a team of 3 or if sometimes 4, I'd imagine that'd be ideal for a 24-hour stint. In theory, you're going to have as much as 18 hours or so when you're not actually in the car. So what do you do in between that time?
Yeah, as I said, we mentioned and we ran 3 once, which I'm never going to do again. And then we ran 5 at the British 24 this year with Rethink, and we run 5 at the My Premier Daytona 24 with My Premier, sorry, this year at Daytona. So yeah, it's in between. You do a lot of sitting around. You do a lot of nervous watching. You sat there, you're constantly checking. I remember this year at the British 24 at Teesside, it's live streamed with Alpha Live. I'm not sure if you're aware of them. They're the same guys who did the WTF1 Grand Prix the other day.
Oh, yeah, that's the one. I remember seeing them. Yeah.
They live stream the whole race, which I think is crazy. And kudos to the commentators because that's an effort and a half. But I tried to take myself off to get my mind off it because I really was just fixated on it. And I went to go get some food, and I was watching it when I was sat eating my food at this car park in Teesside. So it is hard to detach. But usually you just end up sitting by one of the screens, watching the times, watching the lap times, just seeing what's what, really just taking notes on what's going on. If you're on next, I always try and have a look at the weather forecast and see what the next half an hour, 2 hours doing, so I can sort of prepare myself for that eventuality. And if possible, try and get some rest. But it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I can imagine. Obviously, as a driver, you can probably, you go around and do the best job that you can, try and hope for a clean stint, make up some places if you can, and go as fast as possible. But the moment you get out of the car, I can imagine the one thing that will probably annoy me the most is my teammates coming up to me that aren't going back in the car straight after me to try and get tips if I've been going faster than them. Have you had that before, or do you badger your team if you have a teammate that's gone and done a quicker stint than you? Just try and find where the grip is or what they're doing that you're not.
I think generally we all come the race, we're all on a relatively equal pace, so it's not really a case of as soon as they get out the car go and harass them about what line they're taking through XYZ, because for the British 24-hour you have 2 full days testing, the Thursday, Friday, and then you have practice on the Friday night, and then Saturday morning you're into qualifying. So by the time you have them 2 days, you're really sort of usually you're on top of what's what and where to go on which corner. So it's not really a case of badgering, but if something changes on the track, as I say, it's a team environment. And with Rethink, we ran 2 karts. So we had the 103, which I was racing, and the 104. So I think that's 10 drivers, if I can do my maths. I think it is. But I think the 104 ran 4. So it was 9 drivers overall. But any little changes on track, if it was a bit of drizzle, if, some grip didn't come back or whatever changed, it was, that everyone was very, they communicated well to the team to let everyone know. It's not like a badgering process. People are just very open, and we're not trying to beat our teammates because ultimately it's the team that matters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we should remember motorsport is a team sport as best as we can, even though some of us prefer to be the hero. I mean, for me, I don't know, I can imagine quite a lot of back and forth between the teammates and the drivers thinking who's going to start, who's going to finish. I mean, naturally, everyone probably would want to finish the race just in the off chance that they're the one that takes the checkered flag. I mean, have you had much of that in your team, or do you just do it random and just see how it goes?
It's all been quite easy actually. So it's not necessarily been random. Like I put myself down to do a start at this year's 24 hour. But I don't mind. Like it's not. I'm not going to take it personally. If someone else really wants to start, if they're better in that situation, let's remember that 24 hour this year was only my second pro kart race ever. So starting that in a field of nearly 100 karts would be crazy at Teesside as well, which is notorious for carnage on the first lap. In 24 hours, we just let the guy who owns the kart, most experienced, he's quick look is, and we let him go out and sort it. But no, I've never had any issues with any of my teammates really, let alone about starts or anything.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, it all sounds really, really good. It sounds like a good team vibe, team environment. I'm gonna mention, because we spoke briefly before you come on the show, Alex, and of course there was one race in particular I was interested to get a little bit more detail about. You mentioned you raced a lot in Teesside, but of course you've done your racing at Milton Keynes in particular. One track, obviously the Daytona circuit. The circuit, of course, they're talking about the WTF1 race where they were going around there. Your team did rather well. You got a P3, which was a big result for you, but I mean, it might be best if you sort of describe how it went down, because you were saying to me you were gutted that you weren't able to get the win. How did that all go about?
Yeah, a part of it still hurts, Adam, but it's, you know, in the lead up to the race, everything was great. We had a team together of 5, which is genuinely, I believe, the strongest team I've ever been in. All so well matched. We all get on so well. We've been racing together at Tamworth, at Daytona Tamworth, in that in-cut series for the last 3-4 years. We all get on fantastically well, and we're all on a good level of pace, all very equal. So there's no huge disparity, which I think is a big thing in a team, because it's all well and good having one quick driver, but if you've got 2 slow drivers, it cancels out all their good work. So all on a very good level, all very happy with the car, all feeling good on the Saturday morning for the practice. Got into qualifying. Andy Spencer, who we drafted in, and is an absolute rocket, put it on pole. I think 2 tenths ahead of a team that was running 10 kilos underweight. So that just shows how impressive his lap was.
I mean, did they sort of scrutinise in terms of the weight of the carts? Because I'm quite surprised to hear that, because I know, of course, you can't cater for the weight of the driver, but if someone's running a lot lighter, I mean, do they check for those sort of things, or do they just have to meet a minimum weight?
Yeah, so after you go out, it's similar to F1. When they go out for the first time in qualifying, they're in parc fermé. When you go out for the first time in qualifying at the Daytona 24, you're under weight restrictions. So I think it might be 185 kart and driver. I think the kart's maybe 114 or something like that. And these guys obviously came in underweight. I'm not sure how they managed that. Maybe they didn't fuel before practice and the fuel bay closed, but
Well, I know we were looking at automated racing series, but I think that's kind of taken the biscuit a little bit. I don't think I'd be too popular being drafted into those. I'm not exactly what you would call lightweight. So I don't think many of the teams would be looking my way, regardless of any sort of talent I think I might have. But yeah, of course, you know, back to the actual race itself. So obviously, you know, qualifying seemed to be going well. You guys want to height. I'm guessing that you guys probably felt that today could be your day, going in with so much speed, of course, between the lot of yous.
yeah, I remember speaking to I was interviewed by one of the people who was doing some filming for Daytona, and they said, you know, looking good. Last year didn't go well. Do you think this year's the year? A similar question to what you just asked. And I remember saying, it's all well and good being on pole. We got 24 hours. You know, last year we started 3rd and finished 9th. So anything can go wrong, and anything could go wrong. So I did say we were going to take it second at a time, but I'll be honest, as soon as that first lap ticked over and Andy was starting to pull out a lead, I was thinking, all right, okay, we can do this. So Andy did about an hour and a half, and it was looking good. I hopped in the kart for the second stint, and about half an hour, 45 minutes into the stint, there was a big hesitation on power out of the hairpin at the back corner, which leads onto the longest straight on the track. So, and initially I just, you know, knocked off, sort of ignored it as one of them things. As you know, when you lead in the race, you notice these little things, and but it kept happening, and it gradually got worse to the point where I was losing 2, 3, 4 seconds a lap. And I was on the radio. I can't say what I was saying.
Yeah, something like the Kimi Räikkönen playbook, I'd imagine.
yeah, I wasn't happy at all. Not at the team, but at the fact that this was going wrong and I could feel it getting worse. Um, and it got to a point where it wasn't just that back corner. It was out of every slow speed corner. I'd put my foot down and the car would just bog and not do anything. So I made the decision to bring it in. And when I was on the weighbridge in the pit lane, the thing blew up. So if I would have continued on, it didn't blow up as in explode, but it cut out. Karting term for blow up. So if I'd have continued on to turn one, I would have stopped at turn one and we'd have to be recovered by the truck, which would have cost at least 10 more minutes. So almost a blessing in disguise, me bringing it in, but we ended up dropping down to 33rd. I think we lost about 13 minutes in the pits. And it was due to a coolant issue. I did forget to mention that. We were originally told it was a spark plug. Well, I'm sure I was told it was a spark plug. So I was like, okay. And then about 2 weeks ago, I found out it was a coolant leak. So I'm not really sure how that happened, but that's motor racing. It happens. We got our heads back down, as disappointed as we all were. I think there's famously a video of me kicking over one of the pit lane bollards, as I wasn't happy at all. We got our heads back down. We kept pushing, never gave up, and we're just sort of chipping away, just one position, another position, another position. We got up to 20th, then 15th, then 10th, then 5th. And then I think with about 20 minutes to go, we were chasing down third place, and we managed to get them. And for the last 15 minutes, it was just sort of, we just sort of relaxed. And yes, Andy brought it back home across the line in third, and super happy. It's good just considering the circumstances, but in all honesty, we should have won.
Yeah, we've had a lot of that this season. I think Lando Norris could probably relate to that to a degree with his experience in Sochi. But yeah, I mean, that's a really, really interesting story, Alex, and I can totally understand the frustrations. And I think sometimes, even when you're, even if you don't have much experience, sometimes you can go around for a while and you can feel when something's not quite right, even if it's in the seat of your pants, in the way that Niki Lauda quite famously described a lot during his career in F1. And it always feels like when something's not quite going right, the first thing you kind of think is, oh God, I'm losing power, or I'm not going as fast, and you start to panic. I'm guessing as you're going around, you're probably dealing with the nerves as best as you can, or you're in some sort of a groove. I suppose when you're back out on track and you're trying to hunt everybody down, all of that nerve and mental anguish that you probably had early on just goes out the way, and you're almost just chasing everybody down without a care in the world, really.
Yeah, exactly. I remember for the first stint, when Andy was leaving away, I was probably as nervous, and I don't know why, it just came over me about 10 minutes before my stint. I was almost as nervous as I've ever been before getting in a kart, because we were leading, and it's relatively quite a big scale race for karting, and I was about to hop in the kart and have to do the job and try and match Andy, which is it's not an easy job, because Andy's an absolute rocket. So we once the issue happened, obviously the first stint, I think I drove relatively well, but it wasn't my best. No mistakes, but it just wasn't perfect consistency. Could have done a bit better with traffic. Obviously the issue happened, nothing you can do. Came to the pits, got it fixed, and we sent the next driver back out, because there was no point me going out for another half an hour then coming into pit again. So we just cut that stint effectively short, sent another driver out, and they got on with it. And when, as you said, when I got back on, it was all the nervous energy was just turned into sort of want and desire to get forward and get back up the pack, because we believed we could still win. We were very confident. After about half an hour, I sort of calmed down and was like, thought about it a bit more logically and thought, okay, we might have just got our bad luck first, because it's 24 hours. Unfortunately, the teams who finished 1 and 2 were the only teams to not have any problems.
And that's always the way, isn't it? Because, I think probably a lot of people that don't appreciate, if they don't know much about endurance racing, is that you've mentioned obviously quite a few huge problems that you went through. And of course, if you didn't spot them, they would have been a lot more severe than they actually were. And the reality is that almost everybody at these events goes through some sort of reliability issue at some point, or if someone's damaged the car. I mean, I can give you a tale from a karting experience I had at a circuit in Tilbury, where I'd tried to go round sort of a double apex right-hander, and halfway through there was a curb on the outside. And you know as well as I do, at some of these circuits, the curbs aren't actual curbs. They're like bollards almost, but they're just planted to the circuit. You're not supposed to go on them. And I'd gambled a little bit too much on the first apex to carry as much speed as possible. And half a wheel had kind of gone to the outside, and the axle was there, and it completely snapped in half, the axle, and the rear tyres locked, and I just kept spinning out, almost like watching Nikita Mazepin on a regular basis, just spinning out, and you're thinking, what is going on? I got out of the car and realised that the rear wheels weren't turning because the axle had completely snapped off, and it was about one of them, I think it's like a 15mm thick one, like really, really thick one. And yeah, my dad wasn't too impressed when I brought that back to him. When they wheeled the cart back, he said, "Where's the axle?" And I said, one here, one here. He's like, had no idea how I did that. So, but that sort of thing can happen quite easily, you know, at karting circuits. And I can imagine when, with all due respect to your opposition, Alex, obviously when something like that happens, you're obviously thinking in your head, right, okay, how many laps are they going to lose? How many laps are we going to claw back? And you're almost trying to do your maths homework whilst you're racing around, try and figure out where you're going to end up at the end of it.
Yeah, I'm the worst for doing maths homework when I'm racing around. I mean, just ask my dad, who usually sits on comms when I'm on the commentary headset when I'm on the track. He always tells me to just focus on what you're doing, but I'm always thinking about, okay, what's this car do? What's this car do? I'm trying to work out their strategies whilst trying to work out my own as well. I've got the worst mind for it, but I feel as if my mind always works in overdrive and always, in a karting sense at least, always thinks 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, and tries to make it the best out of what would have been a worse situation at Milton Keynes. But I think it's hard not to do. As I consider myself quite a sportsman-like person, but at the same time, you want to win.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
A little bit of reliability niggles wouldn't go too bad over the car ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you never really think too much, especially for your own race. You're never really thinking about, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? I imagine the mindset. Again, my experience is rather limited to this, to a shorter format. But for yourself, obviously, when you're going out there, you're doing a 90-minute stint. I'd imagine the mentality is, okay, just got to go out there, be fast, be consistent, don't make any silly mistakes. And then by the time I finish my stint, I can put my feet up and relax and hope my partners do the same. I mean, is there a lot of that going on, really?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I tried to map out what's been happening with the driver that's been on at the minute. Try and establish a goal of what to do, whether that's make up positions, just be consistent, keep it on the black stuff. Go into the stint with a clear sort of vision of what I need to do, what position I'll be helping the car into, what the weather's going to do. And as I said, hopefully there's someone on my comms as well, on my radio, who can just, I think it's so important having someone on your radio throughout a 24, because you know whether to battle, whether to let a cart through. It's just very convenient. And but yeah, as I said, I think going into a stint with a clear sort of vision of what's going on and what situation you're in, it is important for me.
Yeah, no, it really, really sounds good. And it's really interesting to hear about that, because I imagine a lot of people obviously probably wouldn't even heard of karting races that do an endurance format, especially one of 24 hours. And they might be interested to get into something like that. But of course, before we talk about that, I'm interested to know about what your ambitions are for yourself and the team for next season. Of course, you mentioned the calendar being introduced. Obviously, you've got plans to do and races to go to. But what are your ambitions for next season with the team and beyond that, I suppose, in endurance karting?
Yeah, well, next season I'm leaving Rethink. I'm leaving Rethink at the end of the season, unfortunately, which it was a tough decision, because I think them boys, they're fantastic. Honestly, a great group of lads. Unfortunately, the performance isn't quite where I or they would like it to be. It's not. We in BPEC there's 3 classes. I should have specified this earlier, but there's elite, pro, and clubman. We race in the clubman category, and Rethink sort of struggled towards the midfield of that. And I got offered a drive at a team called Modernised Racing for next year. And I had to say, thank you very much, Rethink, but I'm going to take Modernised, because they're a strong team. They've won the Clubman Championship this year, I believe. They won the 24-hour this year. I believe they also won the 24-hour in Clubman last year as well. So they're a team that I suppose has got a rich recent history in Clubman. And as I said, it wasn't easy leaving Rethink. But as I say, they gave me my first proper taste of endurance karting in a series. So I'll be forever thankful for that. And Modernized are also with Haas, so I'll be just across the garage from them. But to answer your question as to next year, integrate myself into pro karting because it's a completely different driving style. I'm personally used to driving D-Maxes. To then do the odd pro kart race, it takes some adjusting, and I don't feel that I'm sort of at the peak of what I can do. However, next year I think I'm going to be prioritizing the pro karting. So I think that will be the goal, to sort of get myself completely comfortable to the point where I can rock up to a race and be on pace with what I can do. And have a good time. I think looking at the team, I don't think there's anything I can tell you, but the team lineup for next year is looking good, and can't wait to get going. I think we got a test day at the start of next year, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, well, it sounds really exciting, Alex, and I'll certainly be looking forward to seeing how you get on. Certainly hope to wish you the best of luck with that next season. I'm sure you'll do well. I imagine probably a bit cheeky to ask, but as you'll be overtaking your former teammates, maybe on occasion might give them a little bit of a cheeky wave, or perhaps a few little hand signals, depending on how that goes down, maybe.
Yeah, I might have to give them a little wave, a little
Yeah,
goodbye.
just for a little bit of banter, more than anything
Yeah,
else.
they'll take it well.
Yeah. But out of curiosity, Alex, I know a lot of people listening to this might be interested in karting, or might, have not even heard of a pro series like that in terms of karting. If there was someone out there listening to this that wanted to get into something like the BPEC series, what would you recommend to them as a way of sort of getting it, even if it's like an entry level, or not necessarily with BPEC, but any other pro karting series they think they might be capable of getting involved in?
Yeah, I think it's as the day go by, it gets tricky to get into motorsport. It's so expensive nowadays. It's almost ridiculous. But I'd suggest starting at your local track, whether it's a team sport. I personally started at a place called Fastlane in Fenton, and well, actually, if we're going to wind the clock back even further, I started at in Almansil in Portugal. I'm not sure if you're aware of that place. It's a city, a town in Portugal, which has a little karting. It's got a big karting track, and then it's got a little junior karting track. That's where I started. We go on holiday every year, me and my family, to Portugal. And one time we were out, we thought, oh, let's go, because we'd watched F1, but I'd never raced. I was about 6, 7 years old at the time, and I was like, oh yeah, let's go on the karts, and I enjoyed it. And I got back and was like, can I do karting? So I went down to, as I mentioned, Fastlane, and did arrive and drive sessions every Saturday morning for a couple of years, or about a year, to get my iron and sort of improve. And then I went to Daytona in Manchester. It's now team sport, I believe. But we went to Daytona, did what was at the point, I think it was called a race school, to which I got I think it was a license to compete in their championship. It wasn't tricky. It was turn up and do some racing lines and do a test on flags and stuff. And
I've heard of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of doing anything like that, because I just figured at the time, do I really need to do that? I can turn up and just prove I'm good enough and I'm safe enough, and that was it. But apparently it's a big thing now, all in the name of
Well, I
safety.
had to do that to get entry into this championship, I believe, at the time. I don't think you need to do it anymore, but you did. So I did that. Started racing at Manchester for about a year, and then they opened up Tamworth, which was an outdoor track, and I'd never done an outdoor track before other than this one in Portugal. So never done an outdoor track competitively, and obviously an outdoor track is a completely different kettle of fish. Weather, temperature, are just two of the factors that go into making, and depending on what the race looks like. So yeah, continue to race at Tamworth, building up my experience. And as I say, it's just through people I know. So I think this sport is a lot about who you know. It's important to get them contacts, which I've built up through, as I say, racing at Daytona, Tamworth in the in-kart series for the last couple of years. If you have the money, you can go out and buy a kart and take it to test days. But I wouldn't just go and buy a kart and then take it out as your first experience. I'd massively recommend, if you've got a Daytona local to you, do their in-kart series, or not a few other of their series, or even if it's just arrive and drives, which is what I started in, just to see if you really like it, because karts aren't cheap. And if you're going to go into the owner kart sort of world, I think you need to be sure that it's right for you and you're going to enjoy it, because it's not only is it very expensive, it's a lot of hard work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can certainly attest to that. From my own experience from growing up as well. I think I'm kind of showing my age here. I remember the first kart track I ever went to was a place called F1 City. It was over at City Airport.
Okay.
And yeah, this is me definitely showing my age. I think I was about 6 or 7 years old first time I ever went out in a car. And literally, the bless her, the old lady that ran the place, I'm not sure she's around anymore, sadly. She used to keep telling me off because I used to kept trying to overtake people in sessions where they didn't want you to do that. They wanted you to just go around and have fun because you're all kids. They're like, oh, no one do anything silly. So you just get told off a lot for doing that. But as you said, lots of people have their local circuit. It's the best place to go is to arrive. And, just try it out, see if you like it. There's plenty of stuff online, of course, you can look at if you want to be competitive, as you mentioned, that series as well. And that's kind of what it's all about with racing in general. It's not a cheap sport, unfortunately. You go to most kart circuits, you do like a ride and drive session for half an hour, and it'll set you back about £30 minimum. So you really got to kind of be in it and have a little bit of money on you to kind of make that a regular thing. But it's definitely something to get involved in. It's something I wish I was more involved in when I was growing up and competing in racing. But obviously I was trying to do every sport I could imagine. So it was a bit of a nightmare with that one. But no, it was really, really good to talk to you on that one, Alex. Of course, I will leave a link in the description to BPEC and to yourself, of course. Are they doing any more live streams next season that you're aware of, or was it just for the WTF1 event?
Alpha Live, as I said, do stream the 24-hour every year, but I believe that's the only one that they live stream.
Right.
Live because of it. It's a huge event. It's a very big scale, and a lot of people tune in to watch along. So that's I think it's something like this. I can't remember the dates, but it's sometime early on in August next year. If anyone's interested, and unlike me, plans that far ahead, it's around that time in August. If anyone wants to tune in, it's completely free. It's on YouTube, and it's a good watch. The commentators and the producers do a good job of putting together a good production.
Yeah, sounds really good. Anyone that is interested, of course, as I said, I'll leave a link to Alex's Instagram and, of course, Alpha Live as well, just to make sure that if they do an event like that again this year, then people will be able to check that out. I mean, those 24-hour events are always fun to watch from time to time. It's kind of like the Le Mans race, I suppose, as a glorified example, I suppose, of something similar on a much grander scale. That you kind of you put it on and you're watching it in stages. I mean, there are hardcores that watch it for 24 hours straight. I don't know how they manage that. I always like to dip in and out and obviously see the main parts at the start, at the end. But it's always fun stuff to get into, and sometimes, it's for the hardcore that just love racing. I don't think there's an experience quite like an endurance race. So I definitely recommend those of you that haven't tried it before, definitely try it. I certainly got to get out there and do a little bit more of that myself. But let's move on a little bit, Alex. Before we come on, we were talking about some of the other stuff that you had done involved with racing. You mentioned some charity work that you did, or you went to a race where you were able to raise some money for Sporting Minds UK. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that was? Because that sounded like quite an interesting story and a successful day for you.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to work with Sporting Minds UK, who've grown exponentially over the last sort of year for completely the right reasons. I think we'll all agree. I was lucky enough to work with them throughout the back end of last year, I believe. It was, as I say, that I mentioned, we did the 24-hour in Milton Keynes Daytona with the 3. That was the one we did with Sporting Minds. We got these suits made up, Sporting Minds UK down the side, similar to the Red Bull suits. You know how they sort of had Red Bull down the side.
Oh, I like that.
We sort of took a page out of their book and threw Sporting Minds down the side. I think they look really cool. We've had positive and negative reviews. My mum not being a fan, but
oh, really?
Yeah, I know. I was. She wasn't happy at all. But
I mean,
so
can mums do that? Just on a
Yeah.
can mums actually? Because my mum's my biggest fan. I have no shame in admitting that. She's lovely like that. And I'm not just saying it for her benefit because she listens to this. It's true, but I'm surprised that what did your mum not like about the racing attire?
I don't know. She said it was boring and doesn't stand out. So we've given her a little bit more creative control over the new suits next year. That's for sure.
Oh, right. So that's what it's all about. She was sort of subtly hinting that she wanted creative control. Right. So she's bound to like it this year then.
I hope so. If not, we've got a problem.
Well, Alex's mum, hope you do a good job. I'll certainly be keeping an eye out for it and let her know what I think. I'm sure it will turn out to be really, really good. Mums know best, don't they? So,
Of course. But back to Sporting Minds, I was, as I said, lucky to work with them. They're great charity run by fantastic people with a fantastic message. I think providing it's free mental health and support sessions, therapy for athletes between the ages of 16 and 30. I think it's addressing what really is a prominent issue in today's world, unfortunately. And I say a charity that is quite close to my heart because, as I say, it's got an important message, and I think it's going about things the complete right way. So, as I say, we were lucky enough to be able to work with them, raise just under £700, I think, for them in the time period that we were fundraising. Would have liked to have raised a little bit more, but I think 700 for what was a relatively new charity at the time. I think it was. I hope it was well received by them, and which I'm sure it was, and went on to provide a lot of help for a lot of important things, which, as I say, I'll be quite proud about.
Oh, absolutely, and so you should be. That's a fantastic amount of money, and considering it's for a karting event as well, you wouldn't expect to raise as much money as that. So no, Kurt, that was a fantastic. Well done for that. Certainly be looking forward to seeing, obviously, the great work that Sporting Minds UK do. Of course, as someone that has had some mental health issues in the past, I can certainly relay to the fact of how important it is to address those issues for so many young people, to just have the forum and the support to be able to just talk about these issues and address them before they can, get overwhelmingly dangerous to not only the livelihoods of those that are involved, but those that, that care about them, etc., etc. So, no, that's a really, really fantastic cause, Alex, and, well done for your work and your efforts on that, as of many other people, of course, that have been involved in Sporting Minds UK. And of course, I will leave a link to their socials as well for anyone that wants to know more. And of course, if there are anyone out there that does require any support, and just to let them know where they can go to get that. Seeing as we're sort of moving along with the topics, let's have a little talk about some of the stuff that you've done for like esports and online work as well, because you and I, obviously, we know each other through a little bit of a past in commentary and some online gaming on the F1 game in particular. Obviously, my story is quite straightforward, but how did you get involved in that sort of thing? Because it's quite a good network of young people that sort of go online together. They'll have some online leagues and races. I know we see the stuff on F1 Esports that's on TV at the moment, and obviously the big stars in that. But of course, that kind of sprouted, if you like, organically from so many online league races that have been going on probably since, Formula One games, or even on consoles like Xboxes and PlayStations.
Yeah, as I say, I started out in league racing back in the league called, you'll remember, Adam, GPRL, which I just joined. I was looking for a league. I think it was back on F1 2017, if I'm not mistaken. I was getting into the game more. I was enjoying it. I was getting quicker, and I was like, let's join a league, because I was watching, your TM at Mardix, if Tom 97 was doing YouTube back then.
Oh wow,
I think
yeah,
he was.
yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. No offense to Tom if he's watching. Them sort of guys who would go and do league races. I was almost inspired by them to go and join the world, and just not really seriously, but do it every Friday at 5 o'clock and rock up and try and put together a good race. I think the best I managed that season was 4th at Canada, which I still remember because I was quite proud of that result. And then at the end of the first season, the ownership decided to leave, decided to step down. For whatever reason, he couldn't keep up. He couldn't do it. So I put myself forward to run the league, to just oversee everything, what was going on. It was very out of the blue. I was very inexperienced, but I got it alongside another player. And, we sort of managed it. And just before the second season, I was starting to think, because this is when Vision Racing League, VRL, was sort of coming through, and FEL, of course, which me and you are both very familiar with, starting to break through with the whole commentary side. And at this point in time, we didn't have a commentary sort of a team. We didn't have a streaming platform. We didn't stream it. It wasn't broadcast. So with my vision to compete with them two leagues, I took the plunge to not race and instead commentate myself over the races, which I believe I did for 4 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, or 4 and a bit, and then it stopped, I think, 3 or 4 races into season 6 because we lost all our drivers to VRL. We sort of collapsed into a sister league for them. which I think was good because it integrated me with a lot of the people I still speak to today. It's a great group of people, and as I said, I got a commentary. I'm not going to say job, but I was commentating for them on Sundays, sometimes alongside yourself, Adam. Sometimes you were commentating over me racing on in VRL F2. So yeah, that's sort of how the esports thing I'd say started.
Yeah, because it's quite a nice community. Obviously, young men and women that obviously want to just get involved. You can do that. There are so many great online leagues out there. For some people, it's just a case of you go on YouTube, for example, and most of these leagues usually broadcast or stream their races live for them on YouTube, for example, or even Twitch in some cases. And for some people that want to get involved, that don't know much about online leagues, it was fairly new to me when I was racing on F1 games, like when Cody's were first doing their F1 games on 2010, and that this is when like league racing become a thing. And it was only a few years after that where I actually started getting involved in that myself, playing on a PlayStation, for example. And it's just grown so much more now that anybody can get involved in that. And of course, if you are interested, guys, there are so many leagues out there. You just have to look up league racing. Loads of different leagues. You want to get involved, just find their socials and just say, look, if you've got any spots, and just find out their date and times. And it's a great way to sort of compete and have some fun with your mates, really. I feel like it's a niche that has existed for about a decade now. And of course, you have your esports series and other games, etc. And, but F1, it's been a bit different. And now it's being glamorized now in the way that it is on the esports scene. There's so many people coming in. So I definitely recommend it. And like you said, Alex, it's mostly about connecting and networking with people from all over Europe and the world in some cases, if you haven't got to worry about lag, for example, because of course, some people have that a bit worse than others depending on their internet connections, but it's a great way to connect with people and meet new people and build friendships as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I completely agree. As I say, as I mentioned a minute ago, I still speak to some of the people on a daily basis, and I'd actually consider some of them my friends, even though I've never met any of them. So yeah, I'd say great group of people, and yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, it's always an opportunity for people to try their hand at commentary as well, which is surprisingly more fun than I thought it would be, actually. I mean, we see some people, obviously, in the online scene, like I think George Morgan, for example, a really, really good commentator. I admire his passion, admire his enthusiasm. I remember once, actually, he kindly reached out to me on social media. And I'd heard of him, literally I'd heard of him, I'd heard his commentary, and he's, certainly admire his enthusiasm and the effort and the energy that he brings to his streams when he commentates on, I think he's doing PSGL, I think something like that at the moment. Yeah. And he actually asked me if I wanted to be involved in some commentary with him as an assistant commentator, and I was definitely up for it, but given my situation, I'd just moved a house and my internet was a bit of a mess and I just wasn't really able to do it, so I had to pass that up. But it's kind of nice when you do something like that and certain people that you know of or that are actually doing really well in that scene, and I'm sure George will make it professionally one day. He's really, really good. So yeah, it's always fun to to network with people like that. And as I said, commentary is surprisingly more fun, being able to talk about F1 and racing, etc. I mean, that's kind of why I have a podcast, really, to be able to do that. You never know, guys, but as I said, if you want to get involved in that sort of thing, guys, just look up league racing. I'm sure FEL, they still do league races, don't they?
No, they don't actually.
Oh, they don't?
Oh. Yeah, about a month ago, I believe, and VRL also stopped.
Yeah.
They sure, I think, I can't remember. The last sort of 3 months have been that crazy. It's all gone into a blur. But yeah, the ones that I think we were majorly involved in have come to an unfortunate end. But as one comes to an end, another one opens. So there's going to be thousands of leagues out there if anyone's looking for it. And I genuinely would, even if it's just for a bit of fun with your mates or it's a bit more competitive. As Adam said, go and do it. You won't regret it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a lot of fun. Of course, it's just a game at the end of the day, guys. So, don't take it too seriously. It's not like real life karting like what Alex does. That's the important stuff. But look, speaking of real life, let's get into F1, of course. Now, you've listened to this podcast in the past, Alex. You know what we're about. For those that aren't familiar with us, of course, we do love to talk F1. It's in part the name badge as well, the F1 at the end. And this season, we have been really treated by an incredible battle between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Now, I know, of course, judging by your incredibly designed crash helmet that we were talking about, and I really admire that design, I must say. And you could, of course, for those that don't know, Alex, you can go into details a little bit about that in a moment. But as a bit of a Lewis Hamilton fan, if you don't mind me asking, how have you rated this season so far? Are you enjoying the fact that Lewis has got himself an incredible battle, one that he may not win against Max Verstappen, or are you a little bit worried perhaps that this championship is not going to go to him as easily as perhaps with respect the others have?
Do you know, I'm gonna shock you here, Adam, and probably the viewers as well. I'm not a Lewis Hamilton fan.
Well, there's my
I'm not.
credibility gone then.
I'm not a Lewis Hamilton hater. But as I say, I got the helmet because I think I had one of, or a similar design to one of his older ones. And I saw this on, I think it was CM Racing Helmets or something on Instagram. I thought, that's amazing. So I sort of had my own twist on it. I had the number 34, and I had, instead of Ham on the back, I had BOM for Bomberg. So it was sort of my own little twist. And I thought the helmet itself was really nice. Completely stole his design and everything. But I'd say that's not the helmet I run at the minute. I have the. I'm not sure
if you've got it, I'd love to see.
I don't have it on. It's back at home, but I have the. Right now, it's just a black carbon helmet. I'm not sure if you want to edit this over, but.
Oh no, I can see that. Yeah, that looks very good. Yeah. So those watching on YouTube will enjoy that. But of course, Alex is just showing me a picture of him karting with his black carbon design helmet. That does look pretty slick. I'm not going to lie, Alex. Even if you do nothing to it after, it does look pretty cool. And obviously on the Hamilton front, kids, that's why you do your research about your guests before coming on the show. Otherwise you don't look like an idiot like I just did. But I digress. So yeah, on the Formula One stuff, how have you rated the season so far, Alex? Have you been enjoying it so far?
Yeah, I think the season's been fantastic. It's been great to see a proper championship fight. I think one for the ages. I think we'll look back at this season in 10 years' time the same way we look back at 2012, 2010. Them iconic title showdowns, 2008, 2007 spring to mind, and I'm sure many, many more before my time. We still talk about Senna, Prost. We still talk about Schumacher and Villeneuve. I'm really trying to wrap my brain now, but yeah, I think it's been one for the ages. It's had some very decisive and almost Hollywood moments. If we think back to Silverstone, Monza, which have been, edge of the seat, absolutely crazy, and it's been fantastic, absolutely fantastic to watch along. I was saying during the USA Grand Prix, I was watching with two of my mates the other day. It's been rare that we've had a bad race in Formula One. We went to Spain, which was a good race, which is notoriously a bit of a snooze fest. We went to Russia, which is arguably one of the worst tracks for overtaking on the calendar historically, and we had a fantastic race. Norris nearly won it. So it's been, we got that Ocon win in Hungary, which is usually a bit processional. It's been absolutely here, there, and everywhere, which is fantastic. Not only is it great for us watching, I think it's great for the sport as well. We saw at the weekend how much F1's grown in America. And I think that overall audience boost is fantastic. And to answer your question, yeah, it's fantastic. I massively, massively enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, you summed it up really, really well. I mean, of course, the influx of American fans into the sport, driven by, in a way, by the success of the Drive to Survive series, although hardcore fans will probably have their complaints as well to go with that. I know I certainly did. But the aim of it was obviously to try and paint Formula One in a light to new fans that probably didn't give it the time of day of the past. And now you see a packed out COTA circuit with over 400,000 fans, which is an attendance that will rival any other circuit in the world, if not beat it. So it just shows the power F1 has. It's just such a shame that from what I've been hearing, this Andretti deal looks like it's off with Sauber, which is a real shame because I think F1 needs an American team, or at least a team that's got American foundations in the sport. I know we have Haas, but as I said before, it's practically a Swiss outfit with Gene Haas signing the checks. That's literally as American as it gets. So I'm sure they'll sort something out in the future. It's bound to happen sooner rather than later. But going to the main championship so far, Alex, I'm going to put you on the spot here because, of course, we have loads of things we can say positively about Lewis Hamilton. We have loads of things we can say positively about Max Verstappen. But when it's all said and done and we cross the line at Abu Dhabi at the season's end, who do you think is going to be standing on the top step as the world champion?
Verstappen.
Oh, you didn't have to think about that one, did you?
I was thinking about it as you said it, but I think I've been reading a few things on Twitter that Red Bull, they brought a new front wing to Istanbul, I believe, which they struggled to get on top of, which set them back in both Istanbul and the race after that, which was, help me out, what was the race after Istanbul? It was
I want to say America, wasn't it?
go straight to USA?
Yeah, I'm sure we did. I
In
feel
that
like I'm
case.
being really stupid. No, I understand the point you're making because you're absolutely right. I just think, yeah, it must have been. It must have been because I can't think of any race in between unless I've completely
No,
gone blank. Let's just agree and say if the comments will correct us if we're wrong on this one.
sure.
But yeah, I absolutely understand that, and that absolutely makes sense because of course the Turkey track surface was. They said it was back to where they wanted it to be. But there was still so much uncertainty. The weather didn't really
Yeah.
help the case. And even if it was a dry day, it looked like Mercedes looked relatively comfortable on that circuit, which of course breathed new life into the championship, particularly with the rear suspension trick that Mercedes have, or at least that they've tuned to be a bit more effective, if you like, than the other teams that use the same sort of system. And for me, I kind of worried that for Red Bull's sake, if you like, that, as far as the competitive championship goes, it was brilliant that Mercedes had found pace that they could be on par with them. But it seems like what we saw this weekend, whilst that may be the case, Max Verstappen in particular and Red Bull still perhaps hold a vital edge mentally as well as competitively that could see them to the title. Do you feel that could be the case?
Yeah, I completely agree. That's what I was trying to elaborate before. The gap between Istanbul and USA made me unstuck. But yeah, I think certainly what this weekend proves, or I should say last weekend proves more than anything, is the fact that I think Red Bull are now back with the quickest car because, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure you'll agree, Adam, they've gone to what is notoriously a Mercedes track and beat them. It
Yeah.
was close. It was very close. 3 or 4 more laps. I think Lewis could have had Max. Maybe even 1 or 2 more laps. We'll never know. But that doesn't matter. Max won the race and he got the 25 points to go with it. So I think no doubt it's a bit of an uphill battle for Mercedes, especially with tracks such as Mexico and Brazil coming up, which, the Red Bull's back garden. I'd argue Abu Dhabi will be close. And as we spoke about many times before, Qatar and Jeddah are two unknowns. So I think this championship is really going to come to. I think it's going to go down to Abu Dhabi. I really hope it does, not just in the drivers. With Perez showing the form he showed this weekend, I think it's got to be a positive sign for Red Bull. He could have been on pole. Obviously, the rain at the end of qualifying did affect him. Yeah, I think it's going to be close. But ultimately, if you held a gun to my head and I had to pick, red or blue, I'd go with Max and say he's got it in the bag.
I mean, it just shows a testament to Max Verstappen in particular. And of course, on this podcast, historically, and probably in recent weeks, we probably praised Lewis Hamilton probably a little bit more out of the two of them. Perhaps we haven't really given Max a fair deal on this one in the past. And, we try to be as impartial as we can on this podcast, guys. So I apologize if you feel that we are trying to be partisan to one driver or the other. It changes from week to week. Literally, there was one week I was singing Lewis's praises. I think there was an episode specifically dedicated to me saying Lewis needs to improve. He's not been good enough. And then, of course, Monza happened, which, wasn't Lewis's fault. It was just complete chaos between the two of them. But my point being is that it's amazing how we can look at someone like Max Verstappen as incredibly gifted and talented and mentally strong behind the wheel, as he has demonstrated this season, and almost unanimously feel confident that he's going to go and win it all against arguably the greatest driver of all time. Definitely the most successful, who's still driving at pretty close to the peak of his powers. It just shows how great this championship has been for so many different reasons. And I agree with you, Alex. We can try and dissect race to race to race. Of course, you've mentioned Brazil and Mexico look like Red Bull havens, so to speak. If Mercedes get results there over, then that's definitely going to lay down a marker. And of course, we're going to go to Qatar, which looks like it could be a Red Bull circuit at the Losail circuit, given the nature of it. And arguably, the Saudi Arabian circuit could be more a Mercedes circuit, the way that track layout looks to be. And if, of course, it gets built in time, there's still a lot apparently that needs to be finished in a very short amount of time. It's only a couple of months away, so hopefully they get a move on. But look, I think we're pretty close to about an hour or so I think it's a good way to wrap this up. But Alex, of course, first of all, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the DNF1 F1 podcast. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you about your experiences in karting, and of course all the charity work that you've done, etc., etc. For the benefit of our listeners and followers, where can they find you on social media to learn a bit more about you and your karting ventures?
Yeah, first of all, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Adam. Very happy to be on. Happy to be back whenever you want me. So just drop me a message.
Oh, I'll definitely be calling you back again. Don't worry.
Yeah, would more than happily rejoin, whether if it's a review or a preview, or again, something similar to like this. Social media wise, I'm on Instagram at Alex Bomberg, nice and easy. I'm not sure if that's going to be linked. If not,
Oh, we'll link it. Don't worry. Yeah.
there we go. So it'll be in the description. Twitter, as I'm not very active on Twitter, but if you really want to, you can follow me. And but yeah, if you're trying to follow me, Instagram is probably the place to go. I give my updates usually through the stories. So make sure you keep on the ball and open up the stories. But yeah, I try and document my racing career as well as possible through Instagram, as much as I maybe don't like posting loads. So yeah, Instagram's the way to go. But as I said, thank you, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure, and really enjoyed being on.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely been fun having you on. It's crazy. It doesn't feel like it's been an hour, but you know, when you're chatting away, it's always a good thing as well. Hopefully it made for a good episode for you guys listening in on the podcast as well. But of course, for those of you that do listen to us regularly, you will know that our next episode will be coming up next week. We will be discussing and previewing the Mexican Grand Prix with, of course, our favourite Mexican F1 fan, a girl talks F1, Menena. She will be back with us for a third time on the DNF1 F1 podcast to give us her take on what she expects to go down at the Mexican Grand Prix. And I've got a sneaking suspicion she might be favouring a certain Mr. Checo Perez to get the checkered flag. But of course, we will talk about that in more detail next week on the next episode of the podcast. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Please stay safe, and we'll see you on the next episode of the DNF1 F1 podcast. Take care.